Welcome to CommercialDrones.fm, the podcast that explores the commercial drone industry, the people who power it, and the concepts that drive it. I'm your host, Ian Smith. Hey everybody, welcome to Commercial Drones FM. Today I'm sitting in San Francisco with Benjamin Benharrosh. He's the co-founder of Delair-Tech, which is a French drone company, and he leads the new offshoot Delair America over in Los Angeles. And right now they're focused on expansion into the US and Canada. So Benjamin's been in the drone industry since 2011. A little over 5 years, which is pretty impressive. And he actually used to be my boss whenever I worked for Delair-Tech over in Toulouse in France. So welcome to the show, Benjamin.
Thank you, Ian.
Great to see you here in San Francisco.
Thank you.
So first things first, I have to say, thank you everyone for listening. I'm going to kind of take a little tangent here. So today's recording marks 1 day or 1 month plus 1 day since the show actually launched, and on July 4th. And we've actually hit over 7,500 downloads of the podcast. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So there's definitely something here. People are listening. I guess there was a desire to learn more about commercial drones. So turning it back over to you, number one question, what is Delair-Tech?
So Delair-Tech is a French company, as you said. So we started a bit more than 5 years ago. And we offer aerial solution for observation for professional industries such as rail, power grid, agriculture, and we use drones that we design, that we deploy, and then we process the data to extract information for our customers.
Excellent. So you create the drones from the ground up, like everything?
Exactly. From scratch.
Autopilot.
So, autopilot, cameras, airframe, flight control software, all of this.
Nice.
So we designed it, we sell it, and for some of our customers, we make it deploy by a service operator, and then we process the data for them.
Very cool. So what are some of the drones? What are they called? What kind of drones do you make?
So it's fixed-wing drones. At the beginning of the company, we wanted to target oil and gas market. So we wanted to have like a beyond visual line of sight, long endurance drone. Mm-hmm. So we started with fixed-wing drones. We have two of them now, DT18 and DT26. One is 2 kilograms. It can fly 2 hours, 100 kilometers. And the other one is 15 kilograms and can fly 2.5 hours.
So for our US listeners, both of those drones, 2 kilos and 15 kilos, that's going to actually
4.4 pounds.
There we go. Yeah. 4.4 pounds. So that will be within the less than 55 pound limit for Part 107. Both of them. That's cool. Very cool.
Just a last thing about DT18, it was the first UAV, I think, in the world to be certified by a national authority for beyond visual line of sight. So it was in late 2012. And since that time, everybody who was buying a DT18 in France was authorized to fly beyond visual line of sight.
That's really cool. And it's called like Scenario CAT?
S4.
S4. Yeah, okay, exactly. Cool. So
good memory.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So the DT18, small fixed wing drone, can you tell us a little bit about kind of maybe how you started? Like what you have two other co-founders, Michael Delagarde and
three. We have four.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, four total co-founders. I'm still in drone deploy mode here with the three co-founders. Maybe you can kind of tell us, like, why did you guys start Delair-Tech back in 2011, which is pretty ancient if you think of the drone industry? Yeah,
and actually the project started like in 2009. At the very origin, it was Michael Delagarde, who is one of my associates. So he was working for an oil and gas company, and he experienced like leaks every day on his pipelines. So he kind of imagined a new flying robot that could detect leaks like 20 kilometers away from his base. So he started to design some projects, basic drawings, etc. He started to make some prototypes. And then when he wanted to build a company, he was trying to find some co-founders. And we were at the same school with Michael and Bastien.
That's right. Was this in Paris?
It was in Paris. It's called École Polytechnique.
Cool.
we were at the same school, and he started to talk about this project. I was looking for a project, Bastien as well. Bastien was working in the space industry at that time, so he had like the skills to build telecommunication systems, navigation systems for this kind of machines.
Yeah.
And the fourth one, Benjamin, the other Benjamin, was the boss of Michael when he was working in the oil and gas industry.
Gotcha.
So he kind of gathered all these guys with different skills, and we started a company in 2011.
Isn't there like some really funny story about whenever you kind of started at Delair-Tech, you were in some funny situation where...
Yes, but it's still secret today. Maybe in a few years we'll release it.
Okay, no problem. Whenever you feel comfortable to share it,
okay.
I'm
maybe
sure
at the
everyone...
end of the interview if I feel more comfortable. I'm kidding.
No problem. Cool. So actually, what kind of price range does the DT18 and DT26X fall into? I mean, these are industrial grade, super high quality, handmade drones.
Yeah,
what could one? Yeah, certified beyond visual line of sight in France. So what would one expect to pay for one of these machines?
Okay, and also we haven't talked about the sensors, but the sensors are like professional grade, so we don't carry commercial cameras or this kind of stuff, but it's like professional cameras. Either if it's visible or multispectral or infrared, it's always the professional tool. I mean, we're looking for the best quality of the data because we think the quality of the data is very important when you want to look for information.
Yeah.
So the price range would be, if you're talking about the full package, including the training, the sensor, the software, including the software to process the data, it would be something like $30,000 for the DT18.
Okay.
Depending
US?
on the
Cool.
Depending on the sensor, and 90 with the DT26, $90,000.
Gotcha. Cool. So the DT26, of course, the big price, the price bump there is because obviously that's a larger aircraft, but it can, I mean, how much endurance does it have?
It depends on the sensor. So it can, usually it's 2.5 hours.
Wow.
But it's, especially it has a capacity to carry like 5 kilograms of sensor. So it's been designed around the LiDAR. So LiDAR is a kind of laser that is scanning the Earth. It's much more powerful than what you can do with photogrammetry. You can see like very in deep details. You can see through the vegetation. You can see like power cables. You can see a lot of stuff that our clients want to see.
It's like down to millimeters, right?
Yeah, exactly. Wow. So it sends a lot of impulsion, a laser impulsion, and this is very expensive. This is very big, and the whole DT26 has been designed around this sensor.
Amazing. There's also the DTI XL, like the big surveillance sensor. Exactly. You guys actually, there's been a lot of work with SNCF from Delair-Tech. So SNCF, for those that don't know, is like, I think, Europe's largest railway operator.
I don't know if it's, I think it's with Deutsche Bahn. Yeah, I think they're like competing each other, the German one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay,
but
so
it's big.
One of the largest in
big.
Europe. So they were using, maybe you can tell us how they were using or how they used the DT26X.
Yeah, so they came to us like at the beginning of the company, maybe late 2012, just after our certification for Beyond Line of Sight. And they were looking for a system to be able to make surveillance, night surveillance of their rail, because they are facing a lot of copper cable theft, because at that time the price of the copper was very high, which causes problem for them in terms of investment, because they had to replace these cables, and also in terms of it breaks the service, so the trains cannot run anymore. So it's a very huge problem for them, and they estimate it as a loss of hundreds of millions of dollars per year. So they were looking for some solution to help their teams to make the surveillance by night of the rail. So they have been looking into long-range drones. I think BNSF in the US is doing the same with companies like ScanEagle.
Another railroad company or train. Exactly. What do they call it themselves? Train or railroad company?
I would say railroad, but I'm not sure. And then, so it's basically the way they use the DT26 is that they send it on over the rail. It flies like 2 hours during the night. They make multiple flights, so at the end of the day, they will fly 6 hours per night, and they receive in real time the video, infrared video on their monitor, and they send it also in real time to Paris using satellite communication. So on the base station, you have a satellite antenna that can send it through to any point in Europe.
That is so cool. So are you guys, that reminded me of another cool thing. So are you guys still putting the 3G, kind of 4G LTE modems and Satcom on the drones themselves?
Yeah, so 3G and 4G is already on the drone now, on the DT26, and Satcom, we're still working on it. So the idea is to be able to send information from the drone directly through the satellite to any point in the Earth. But it it won't be for video because the flow and the amount of data that you can transmit using this satellite communication is not enough. But for control and command, it would be like very powerful.
So telling the drone what to do. Okay, cool.
Knowing
so that could be useful. What for, like, huge mapping missions maybe where you're flying, where you're able to actually fly beyond visual line of sight.
Yeah, exactly. Or over the sea. We're talking to like a kind of tuna fish companies.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Interesting. So, I remember we were interested in that a few years ago.
Yeah, actually, I talked to the guy yesterday. So how it works, they have this kind of huge radar on the boats, the boats that is supposed to fish and to catch the tuna. And with the radar, they can detect if you have like birds that are over the sea, like a group of birds. And if there's a bird, it might be because there are some tuna fish below. So today they send a helicopter to verify it. And when they can actually see that there is some tunas, they send the boat.
I've heard some funny stories about the quality of the helicopters that they have on some of those tuna boats. Like, they're not very well maintained.
Yeah, exactly. So they are facing like death and
oh wow.
Yeah, it's a huge problem for them.
I made a good career decision then, not doing that. But yeah, that's a really cool. It's a very clever way. I've been tuna fishing with my uncle, who's a big fisherman, and the way that we tried to spot, and it was a much smaller operation. It was on one boat. But we would look for the birds as well. Yeah. And so the birds would be trying to get like the little fish, and the tuna from below would be getting the little fish. So then that would be like the whole, it was like the X marked the spot for the tuna. So you'd try to get that. Well, that's really cool. Yeah. So that'd be awesome to get some more information on that once it comes through. What kind of industry? So we've mentioned the tuna fishing industry. Yeah. We mentioned railroad industry, which is really cool because I'm much more passionate about, every day we talk about agriculture and construction and mining, which is really cool, but I like to, kind of expose more of the industries. What other industries besides maybe those three that I just mentioned are people using Delair-Tech drones in? So
just to finish about the railroad industry, so they came to us for security purposes, but now they use more the drones for maintenance aspects. So they want to detect some very specific anomalies about the railroads. They want to make some topography. They want to detect if the vegetation is not too dense close to the power power line they have above the catenary. No, I don't know how to say it in English, but
the vegetation
the power cables that is above the railroad.
Okay. Yeah, I got you. I think we all understand.
Yeah. Okay.
No
so
problem.
This kind of now they are more like looking at this than security purposes. They are still looking at the security, but actually their biggest need is about the maintenance. Okay. And we kind of do the same thing for power line companies. So we try to detect anomalies on the millions of images that we take above the power lines. So vegetation encroachment, missing insulators, hotspots, all this kind of stuff that you can have on a power line. So we just signed a big contract with the main utility in France to be able to detect anomalies on a significant part of the network.
EDF?
ERDF, which is
okay.
Now it's called Enedis. But it's like the company that transports the electricity. EDF is the company that produces the electricity.
I see. Okay. Very cool.
And last thing with oil and gas companies as well. So what we do in France, I think in the US, they have the same needs. Is that so the pipelines are on the ground, and by law they have to detect any excavators that would be digging into the ground without knowing there's a pipeline below.
Right of way violations.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a big thing. People are using traditionally, like, when you're building hours as like a helicopter pilot or a fixed wing pilot, then you can kind of get on like the pipeline patrol route and just kind of fly, and then someone sits there with a clipboard and then marks if it's okay or not, and then records GPS coordinates.
Exactly.
So that'll definitely help a lot.
Yeah, so we worked a lot on the image processing part of it because you need to be able to detect excavators from aerial imagery. So it's been a long process, and now the last experiment we've done, we were pretty successful. We had like a 97% of success.
Oh, this is an automated algorithm you're talking about. Okay, so it's like automatic image analysis and object recognition, detection. Very cool. All right. What about some milestones in usage or sales? Like, I think I saw something on the Twitter feed of Delair-Tech, like 60 countries, 100 countries, something like that, where people are using Delair-Tech drones.
So it was 30 countries last year.
30 countries. Okay.
Now I think it would be like 35 maybe.
Gotcha. Okay.
Cool. So 115 drones last year that we sold. We plan to do like 500 this year. And
Excellent. That's cool. So that kind of ties in. So adding more countries to that list, of course, I mean, obviously it's an indicator for the drone industry as a whole too. We want everybody to be selling drones all over the place. What's your strategy with LA? So you moved to the US. I mean, what's the purpose of this? Like, to come to the US and just kind of land and expand and bring the drones here?
Yeah, so I mean, when you're in Europe, you always think about the US. It's always the big market. And actually, it hasn't been the big market for the past 5 years because the regulation was not there. But now that the regulation Part 107 just has been released, it's gonna be a big market. It's gonna be huge especially for infrastructure, because the country is big. You need to inspect power lines, you need to inspect rail, you need to inspect pipelines. So I know the regulation today doesn't allow beyond visual line of sight operations, but it does allow some basic stuff. So we think it's the good time now to enter and to try to deploy our systems here in the country and to build some pilot projects with BNSF, to build some pilot project with utilities, with oil and gas companies, and try to expand our technology to the US. And also we think our competitors of tomorrow are based in the US. So we want to be close to them and,
Yeah. Well, perfect timing. That's really good.
I hope so.
So what about hardware versus software? We've talked about the hardware. We've talked about the drones themselves and a little bit about the software. We didn't get too much into it, but what do you think, which one's easier?
Easier, the software by far. No, I don't know. But what I can tell you is that hardware is hard. As it is in the name, it's hard. And especially when you talk about flying hardware, because you don't have the right to make a mistake, because the sanction is automatic, and it can be very hard. So when we started the company, we started with the hardware, because at that time the hardware didn't exist.
Yeah.
So we needed like these long endurance flying drones, above like 100 kilometers, 150 kilometers. So we started with the hardware, which was pretty painful because we had to rebuild everything from scratch.
Everything, even the autopilot.
Yeah, even the autopilot, the airframe, telecommunication system, everything had to be done on purpose because we wanted to maximize the endurance and the performance of the drones in a very small weight, below 4.4 pounds, because at that time it was the limit in France. So we had to do it from scratch. So it was a long process. It was very hard. But we come from part of the team come from the aviation and space industry. We haven't mentioned that, but we're based in Toulouse. Toulouse is the headquarters of Airbus. So you can find a lot of engineers.
Beautiful city.
Beautiful city, and a lot of skills in aerospace and aviation. So we kind of tried to mix this culture, aviation and space, with a robotic culture, like more startups, geeks, and with very short cycles. So we think in the drone industry, the guys who will be good at hardware will be the guys who can mix these two cultures. And you don't need to oppose aeronautics with robotics. You need to be able to mix them. And many startups have started with like a robotics mindset. And so they were like struggling in making like a certified and safe hardware because it was falling down like very often.
Yeah.
But when you mix it with an aeronautics culture that is more like safe and certified, and you wait until you're sure that your algorithm can fly before you fly, then it kind of works well. So hardware has been very hard, I think, for a lot of companies. So a lot of companies have decided to stop the hardware and to focus more on the software.
Very true.
Yeah, so we think hardware is still important, because if you don't have hardware, of course, you cannot do anything. But we think software as well is might be the most important in the next years, and especially about data processing, image processing, and all this stuff. But today, if you look at the numbers, the companies that are making money in the drone industry are hardware company. We at Delair-Tech, we still do 90% of our revenue based on the hardware sales.
Okay.
So software part is a very small part of it. We know it will grow, but today the companies that are powerful are hardware company.
How many employees are at Delair-Tech currently?
Now a bit more than 70.
Wow. And how many countries are you based in?
So we have offices, so the headquarters is in Toulouse, we have offices in Paris, in Sydney, in Australia, and now in LA.
Great. Are you guys hiring in LA, if anyone, or in any of the offices?
Yeah, especially in LA.
Oh,
in
okay,
LA,
cool.
the idea, so today I'm alone because I just arrived a month ago, and we plan to be at least 5 by the end of the year.
And what kind of positions, if someone might be interested and they're listening and they want to hit you up?
Sales, pilots, and support.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. So I wanted to touch a little bit. One of my favorite things that Delair-Tech has created is the vegetation encroachment algorithm. I was always very fascinated by that. It solves a really cool problem that, well, it's not a cool problem, but it's a really cool solution to a bad problem in that, like, for example, vegetation encroachment on like power transmission lines, for example, in Australia can wreak havoc across the country when it's very dry and the vegetation touches the lines. It can catch fire, especially with some of the tree types they have out there. It's like explosive napalm, and then it just spreads across the country. So maybe you can tell a little bit about, like, or just expand maybe, because we kind of touched on it, about the vegetation encroachment algorithm. I mean, it's so cool. It uses photogrammetry to, like, develop the point cloud, and then I don't know, it like shows you where you need to dispatch a crew.
Exactly. So today you need to understand that it's the biggest budget in terms of maintenance of power line companies. Just in France, they spend 100 million per year just cutting trees above 250,000 miles of power lines. So it's huge. Today, the way they can detect it is that they send people on the ground, so walking guys that are trying to see if there is some tree, and they evaluate with their own eyes if they think the tree is too close to the power line, or they use helicopters. So helicopters is expensive, it's dangerous, it's noisy. Sometimes when it flies over like farms, it can kill some animals, because the animals get crazy, they get scared of it.
Darn helicopter pilots.
So there is a huge need for them. So when they came to us in 2012, they wanted us to be able to detect automatically if the tree was too close to the power line.
Yeah.
So what we do today is that we take some pictures.
That was their like criteria. We want you to just tell me when the tree is close to the power line. Boom.
Exactly.
Do it.
And we want you to do it like every year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We want you to do
for the whole network.
Yeah.
So eventually they'll have just drones all over the place.
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
Every year. So the way it works is that we take some pictures, high resolution pictures. So the resolution is about, the size of a pixel is about 2 centimeters today. Mm-hmm. We take the pictures, then we rebuild in 3D the model of the vegetation. So we build everything in 3D. Then we select the vegetation using a near infrared bandwidth.
Oh, cool.
So it's not in the visible, it's like in the close infrared. So you can see the vegetation because it reflects a lot in this bandwidth. So you select the vegetation from the buildings, from the roads, from everything that is not the vegetation. And then you calculate for each point of the vegetation the distance between the point and the power line. And as soon as it's below a certain threshold, so 1 meter, 3 meter, 5 meter, 7 meter, you spot it in a certain color, and then you deliver to the client kind of a Google Maps where all the anomalies are spotted, all the places where the vegetation is too close to the power line.
Love it. So you started in the drone industry in 2011. How funny would it be to go back, maybe even pre-2011? That was when Delair-Tech was, I guess, incorporated. It was 2011.
Yeah.
How funny would it be to go back and watch some of those first flights of the hardware you guys were building?
It wouldn't be funny. It would be scary, like a horror movie.
Oh, that's so funny. Okay.
That was fun.
So another thing, so we have some cool stories together. So I just want to touch on this. I thought this was very interesting at the time, and now I think it would have some relevancy. So flashback to Abu Dhabi. You and I were there in April 2015. We were at an oil and gas inspection conference, and you had a presentation. So during the presentation, I threw up a survey for the crowd, and this was surprising to me. The survey, it said, do you imagine, roughly, I'm paraphrasing here, do you imagine that you'll be using drones in your business, so in the oil and gas inspection industry, in the next, and then the answers were like 1 year or 2 years, 3 years, and then it went, like the last one was 5 years plus, and then I think there was one more, and it said, I don't know if I'll ever use drones in my business. And the overwhelming majority, the majority of the response was actually like 5+ years, or like, I don't think I'll ever be using them in my business, or I don't know. And I just thought that was, at the time, I was just shocked because this technology is just, even the implications of it are just, sometimes maybe unproven in certain areas, but it's so interesting. So do you think if we went back to that same conference, this year or next year, do you think that answer would change back to a lot sooner than we think?
Yeah, I think so, because so as you said, it was like 1.5 years ago, or maybe
it's so soon.
It's so soon, but in the drone industry, it's huge. I mean, it's a huge step. It's like another century, so it's another era. So it's moving like so fast and so quickly. At that time, I remember, the audience, I think I was maybe the first guy who was talking drones to them.
You definitely were. Yeah.
But I think now it's been a year that everybody's talking about drones, and I think these guys have heard about drones, and now they can imagine like using it in the next year or in the next 2 years. I'm sure about that.
For sure. I totally agree. Yeah, that was just such an interesting.
I mean, it's crazy.
So what's one of your favorite use cases of a Delair-Tech drone? Maybe something that, so there's a lot of news. If you don't know, if you're not French, you might not know as much about Delair-Tech because, even when I was there, like it was all over the news, but a lot of the news and media coverage has traditionally been in French. So do you have a specific use case that comes to mind that was really cool to you? Like specifically you felt like, all right, this is really neat, the stuff that we're doing.
Okay, so we talked about that, but the vegetation encroachment, what I like about it is that it's fully automated, the full process from the beginning to the end. So you just push a button and then the process goes on, and at the end of the day, you get the result and you get the maps. Mm-hmm. So this is pretty cool because there is no human intervention anymore. So this is something we like. But then it's not like the craziest stuff we've ever done. I mean, we've done some stuff that was like, oh my God, we can do that with a drone. Even we were like kind of surprised. So we made like a survey in the Indian Ocean where we could do some topography below the sea, up to 30 meters below the sea. So it was like kind of crazy what you can have with like professional sensors. So it was not like photogrammetry; it was a hyperspectral imagery.
No way.
Yeah, and with the hyperspectral, you can detect like so crazy things, like below 30 meters below the sea.
Wow. Whoa. What was the use case for that?
It was to do some bathymetrical survey in order to analyze the reef.
The reef. Whoa. Was it like for potential oil and gas?
No, it was for the agency in charge of the protection of the maritime area.
That's amazing. Yeah, hyperspectral, I think, well, it definitely has not reached its potential by any means at all. It's just so hard to get a hold of. I mean, they're really expensive. How big was which aircraft was the sensor on?
DT-26, obviously,
26, okay.
Because it's big.
How big is the hyperspectral sensor? Is it like the size of a LiDAR? Or?
Yeah, it's more like the size of the LiDAR. It's a bit more light, but it's mostly the size of LiDAR. So I would say, I don't know in inch, but I would say 20 centimeters per 20 centimeters, something like that, per 20 centimeters.
Gotcha.
And
that's really cool.
Yeah, hyperspectral is a pretty powerful technology.
That's awesome. So in 5 years, 5+ years in the industry, what kind of advice would you give maybe to someone who's just starting like a drone company?
Give up. Change. Do another thing.
Epic advice.
Yeah. Go away. Now that it's still time.
Why has it just been like, is it really, really tough to get started, or you just have to put a huge commitment into it?
You have to put a huge commitment. You have to be cool, because some pretty bad things will happen, so you get to keep your calm and to see, I don't know. I mean, it's something for people who are like, in France we said le cœur bien accroché, so the heart is well on place, because you can have some heart attacks sometimes.
Your heart is secure inside of your chest.
Exactly.
It's not going to be rattled very easy.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So just be aware that it's not going to be a super easy road. It never is in entrepreneurship. Okay, so recently there was a White House drone workshop this past week. The FAA Administrator Huerta had announced that there was over 500,000 recreational drone registrations in the past 8 months, and they compared that to, I believe, and I might be misquoting this, but around 100,000 manned aircraft registrations took decades to get to that point. So drones have 5x'd in such short amount of time, in less than a year, than the entire manned aircraft registry. How do you compare this to France? Do you feel like, well, I don't know any of the statistics as far as that goes. I don't think you're even required to register your drone, maybe unless you're doing a commercial operation. But how does that compare to France? Because France, one of my favorite things is like France just got Netflix in like late 2014. But at the same time, like, there was beyond visual line of sight certified drones from Delair-Tech, the first ones, even before that. So it's so interesting. Sometimes France lags behind, sometimes they're ahead. Obviously, it's a smaller country, but how do you kind of compare that growth in France? Like, what's the drone industry like? Is it growing like crazy still in France?
I think it started very early, as you said. So in 2012, we had our first regulation, who was even more advanced than what you have now in the US. So it was in April 2012. So it grew like very quickly and very early. But now, when you look at the numbers, in the US, you have much more UAV that are registered than in France, even on the professional industry. Because as you said, for leisure, we don't register them today in France. So it started very early, but the growth is not as fast as it is and as big as it is in the US. So I think you're going to be like way more advanced than us in the next few months or years, Oh,
I think, it'll definitely be years. Definitely not months.
I don't know, maybe years, but
Yeah, no, I think that's one thing that we have pretty much in common, is that the bureaucratic process can tend to be pretty slow in both countries. Okay, cool. So any plans, are you guys ever planning to do any like fixed wing delivery drones in the near future? Have you guys ever thought about that?
Of course, we've thought about that, because it's one of the topics that people talk the most about. I don't know why, but this is what people talk about. It's the delivery. But no, we won't do that, because it's kind of it's very tricky technically, regulatory, in terms of insurance as well. And we have a lot to do in observation, so we want to stick to the observation.
Makes sense. You got to have focus. You can't be all over the place. And
we started with drone, but we haven't talked about that too much, but we now want to expand a bit with manned aircraft and maybe space as well.
Because cool.
We think satellite imagery and drone imagery are very complementary.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to mix them if you want to win. Because for a customer like the railway, the power lines, the oil and gas, they don't care if the image comes from a satellite, a manned aircraft, or a drone. They just want the right information at the right price and at the right moment. So
that's really cool.
You need to be able to master all these means. So we have a lot to do in that. So
full-blown aerial data from nearly any altitude.
Exactly.
Then. Okay. the full picture then. What about rotary drones? Any thoughts or plans on expanding into there, or are you guys kind of just sticking with the fixed wing for now?
Yeah, we're sticking to the fixed wing because rotary drones, you have a lot of companies who do that. Yeah, I would say 95% of the drone are rotary wings. And you have very good companies who do rotary wings drones.
Yeah.
So I don't see the point in us doing rotary drone. So no, we stick to fixed wing.
Okay, so one of the last questions will be, scenario. Tomorrow you're starting a drone service company. Benjamin Benharrosh's drone extravaganza company. You can buy 2 drones, so you can buy 1 fixed wing and 1 multi-rotor or rotary drone. Which 2 drones do you choose and why?
I hope you're not asking me which fixed wing drone I would choose because the answer is obvious, and I don't even want to answer to this question. So for the fixed wing drones, it's and then I guess
DT-18.
DT-18 or DT-2026, and I guess it depends on the application. For some application, I think I would buy something like a DJI who can do like a lot of stuff for some application.
Yeah.
For some maybe more professional application who requires a sensor that is pretty heavy and pretty, survey grade. I think I would go something like micro drones or this kind of
Gotcha.
brand.
Cool. Nice. And so last question, are you planning on taking the Part 107 test here in the US? I mean, it is available to non-US citizens, so you can take the test and become a commercial operator. Will you be doing that yourself, or will you have the other pilots?
No, I'll be doing that myself.
Oh, nice.
And with the pilots as well.
So you're going to be soaring above the United States pretty soon.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, you can follow Benjamin on Twitter at Ben7Bs, BIS. And you can follow Delair-Tech, of course, on Twitter at Delair-Tech. It's DELAIR Tech, TECH. And visit the website at delair-tech.com. And, of course, you can also follow Commercial Drones FM, the podcast here, on Twitter at Drones Podcast and at facebook.com/Drones Podcast. If you like the show, leave a review on iTunes and subscribe. We really love you guys, so thank you so much for getting us to this milestone here. And Benjamin, any last parting thoughts for the audience or anything in general about the drone industry?
No, I just have a thought now for my associate who is crossing the channel, the sea in a submarine he designed himself with a friend of his. So I just have a thought for him because he's going to spend a week in that at 100 meters of depth. So
hold on. So this is one of the co-founders of Delair-Tech is underwater in a human-powered bicycle submarine in the English Channel, crossing from France to the UK.
Exactly.
And
no, from UK to France actually.
Okay, that makes much more sense. Then they can pop the champagne
exactly.
on home turf. All right. Good luck, Michael. We're thinking of you. All right, cool. Donc, merci à tous d'avoir écouté et merci Benjamin pour ton temps. C'était un grand plaisir.
Merci Yann, c'était un plaisir de te revoir.
Nous serons de retour bientôt pour le prochain épisode de Commercial Drones FM. À bientôt.
Bye bye.